Randy Schnick wants to know, are we creating more terrorists with our endless wars? So glad you brought that up, Randy. This is something you often hear. Somebody punches you in the nose, let's say. You punch him back. Are you creating more bullies? Are you creating more bullies with this, perpetuating the cycle of violence? This idea that you create enemies by fighting the enemies that are already there. In other words, there's 10 terrorists out there and they've just killed half of our people. Let's go kill those people. All you're doing is making new terrorists. What that is this highest form of arrogance, really. This is that mirroring that I talked about occasionally. Mirroring is the idea that everybody else out there thinks the same way we do. And when you say something like that, what you're really saying is that the people who become terrorists aren't real people. They're just automatons. They're like reflections of us, pale reflections of us. Whatever we do, they react to. They're not real people, don't have their own agendas, don't have their own desires, don't have their own needs or history or culture or anything. No, they just react to what we do. So if we would just leave them alone, they wouldn't want to hurt us. If we didn't hit them back, they wouldn't come back at us, and so on. You can apply this same stupid argument to anybody in history. So by that reasoning, Randy, are we creating more terrorists with our endless wars? Shouldn't we just stop fighting? Why not apply that to the Nazis? If we invade the European continent on D-Day and we go in and bomb German cities and kill German soldiers, aren't we just going to create new Nazis? Aren't we going to just create another generation of Germans who hate us and want to kill us? Maybe. Didn't pan out that way. You can undoubtedly say that when you put a fleet of American bombers over Berlin and you bomb Berlin, is that going to engender a lot of hate towards America? Yes, it is. But guess what? We're already at war by this point, right? We didn't start this. We didn't start any of them. We didn't start any of these wars. Didn't even start the Iraq war, despite what people say. That was just a break in the ceasefire that Saddam Hussein basically been violating for 13 years when we decided to go at it. It doesn't make any sense to say, aren't we creating terrorists by these endless wars? No, we're not. We're fighting terrorists. This is also kind of the same thing as saying, don't we create criminals by enforcing the law? Number one, assuming that it does. It doesn't matter. You still have to enforce the law. Secondly, when you talk about these kind of things, the reason this thing goes this way is because we don't ever fight these wars to win anymore. When you fought Germany or Japan, Japan's a great example. You had an entire nation that was all ginned up with all these guys who were on fire, running around with their hair on fire, and they're trying to, they think they're the master race. So they look at America and they see us a bunch of lazy, fat, stupid, happy, prosperous people. And so they attack Pearl Harbor and they don't think they're going to have a fight. They think we're going to basically say, well, you sunk our battleship. I guess you win. You can have the Western Pacific. Just, stay away from the coast. And as it turned out, we decided to get back into this fight. And in the end of it, we killed all of their fire breathers. Virtually every airman that went on the Pearl Harbor raid by the end of the war was dead. Virtually every single one of the aviators that were in the attack on Pearl Harbor were dead by the end of the war. We killed all their fighters. And what we also did in Japan was we hurt that civilian population so much that they said, okay, it's over. We're done. I would rather surrender than get more of this. And as I've said 100 times on this show, there's only one proven model for turning enemies into friends, and that is you have to beat them into submission. You have to beat them into submission. You have to beat them into submission to the point where they are ready to accept anything from you. They've been told by their rulers that you're going to come and rape them and murder their children and throw their kids over the river and all that other stuff. That's what they were told about American soldiers. We're going to rape all the women. We're going to beat the children to death. We're going to take the men out back and shoot them. And that's what the Russians did. And that's what the Germans did. And that's what the Japanese did. But it's not what we did. What we did was instead of doing that, once they'd surrendered and realized that nothing was worse than more war, then we helped them to their feet. But we only helped them to their feet after they surrendered. We only helped them to their feet after we'd killed those war-crazy, kamikaze lunatics who had basically perverted this entire idea of Bushido and turned it into Japanese militarism. You have to beat them first, and then you can help them up. You can make the same kind of case with the Civil War. I don't know how much helping up there was. Lincoln basically said, let him up easy. Lincoln didn't want any recriminations against the South. Lincoln didn't want anything like what happened in Reconstruction. Lincoln wanted to just have Jefferson Davis and the rest of them just leave the country. And the South was beaten. My favorite story about this comes from a general, Confederate general who's not widely known compared to Robert E. Lee anyway, or Stonewall Jackson. But Joseph Johnson was a guy who ran the Eastern Campaign for a while, was wounded. Lee took over Army of Northern Virginia. Lee made it into the Army of Northern Virginia. Johnson moved out west, and Johnson did a lot of the fighting against Sherman. So Johnson is one of the stars of the Confederacy. He's one of the major players of the Confederacy. And after the Civil War, he was on a steamboat. And one of these young guys who was never in battle, they said, kind of guy who was always talking about battle, but you never saw in battle, was making a lot of noise. This is a year or two after the Civil War was over. Making a lot of noise about how we weren't really defeated and the South's going to do it again. And the Confederacy was never beaten. And Johnson, who fought the war as one of the greatest generals in that war, turned to this young man. He said, young man, I don't know who you are, but I was in the Civil War, and I don't know about you, but I was beaten. Okay, so that's what you have to do. So to the degree that you make more terrorists because you don't kill all the terrorists. You got to defeat them, and then you let them up. And people say this kind of thing all the time, and my answer is, there used to be Barbary pirates. We used to be plagued by Barbary pirates. The Barbary pirates took some significant percentage of the national budget in the early days of this country, and finally we decided we're getting a little tired of it, so we went over there and we sent the Navy over there, and we engaged the Barbary pirates, and we didn't create more Barbary pirates. We killed the Barbary pirates. Pretty much the end of that story right there. So this is just another way to justify your moral cowardice and your unwillingness to deal with the fact that there are people out there who don't like you and want to kill you. Do we really have to fight them? Don't we just create more enemies? No, we don't. This idea that they're just innocent people on a picnic, and suddenly an American airstrike happens. Suddenly, they're radicalized Muslims. No, the people we're fighting are radicalized Muslims, and we killed. People say, what happened to Al Qaeda? I mean, ISIS is a resurgence of the philosophy. But what happened to Al Qaeda? Al Qaeda's dead. Al Qaeda's dead in the sands of Iraq. Barack Obama didn't kill Al Qaeda. George Bush, the U.S. Marine Corps, the United States Army, Air Force, Navy, killed Al Qaeda in Iraq. And in 2005, when Zarqawi was saying, send us all the reinforcements you've got, Osama, because these Marines are not the hot tub sitting, Chardonnay sipping Americans that you told us we were going to get. And then he got a couple 500-pound bombs for his pleasure, too. They're dead in the sands of Iraq instead of in shopping malls in America. So, no, we didn't go over there and create new al-Qaeda fighters. We took 40, 50,000 al-Qaeda fighters who thought we were finished, thought we were the weak horse. They sent them into Iraq. We went into Iraq too, and our guys kicked the living crap out of their guys. That's what actually happened.